local wildlife officials had issued warnings about increased animal activity in residential areas. Deer, elk, and their predators were being forced to venture closer to human settlements in search of water. Several residents had reported mountain lion sightings over the past month, including tracks found in backyards and a large cat spotted near the community's retention pond. Lisa had heard about these warnings, but dismissed them as typical Colorado mountain living concerns. She continued her early morning runs without altering her route or carrying any deterrents, confident that her familiar neighborhood streets were safe. Mountain lions, also known as cougars or pumas, are North America's second largest wildcat species. Adult males can weigh between 115 and 220 pounds. These powerful predators are perfectly adapted for hunting in mountainous terrain, possessing incredible stealth, speed, and jumping ability. They can leap vertically up to 15 feet and horizontally up to 45 feet. Mountain lions are primarily ambush hunters, relying on surprise attacks, typically targeting the neck and spine of their prey to deliver quick, fatal bites. As Lisa jogged through the pre-dawn darkness, she was completely unaware that a 140-pound male mountain lion had been stalking a mule deer through the drainage culvert that ran beneath the street she was approaching. Lisa's approach disrupted the carefully planned hunt, startling both the deer and the mountain lion. Lisa had died from massive trauma to her neck and spine, with the mountain lion's killing bite proving instantly fatal. The investigation revealed that Lisa had been jogging along her usual route when she inadvertently interrupted the mountain lion's hunt, triggering the attack that cost her life. The mountain lion was tracked and euthanized the following day, after being located in the foothills above the neighborhood. It was August 19, 2017, when Felicity Grant arrived at Boulder County Open Space in Colorado, a vast wilderness area known for its rugged terrain and diverse wildlife population. The mountainous region stretched across thousands of acres of dense forest and winding trails that attracted outdoor enthusiasts. However, these same wilderness areas also served as prime habitat for mountain lions and other dangerous predators. Felicity Grant, a 39-year-old fitness influencer from Denver with over 5,000 social media followers, had planned what she called her ultimate wilderness transformation experience. Known for her entitled attitude and belief that her athletic superiority made her exempt from rules, she had already caused multiple confrontations at the park entrance. Her demanding personality became evident when she berated the teenage park attendant for suggesting she read safety guidelines, claiming someone of her fitness level didn't need advice from minimum wage employees. Park Ranger Tom Bradley had attempted to brief Felicity on recent mountain lion activity during her permit application process. The area had experienced multiple cougar sightings over the previous month, including aggressive encounters that resulted in temporary trail close. Felicity became increasingly hostile, interrupting Tom repeatedly. There are moments when I read a story and simply can't shake it. The story of Felicity, for instance. She was a runner who tore down trail close signs, believing they didn't apply to elite athletes like herself. She even told a fellow hiker that jealous locals were trying to sabotage her success. Felicity chose the Rabbit Ears Pass Trail for a solo dawn run, ignoring all warnings. She wore noise-cancelling headphones, blasting loud electronic music, and carried raw steaks in her backpack for a post-workout meal. Fellow hiker Maria Santos had tried to warn Felicity about the dangers of solo hiking during dawn hours, but Felicity responded cruelly. She even tore down several warning notices, claiming that taxpayers like her had every right to use public trails. Mountain lions, you see, are perfectly adapted for hunting in mountainous terrain. Adult males can weigh up to 180 pounds and measure over 8 feet in length, with powerful hind legs capable of propelling them up to 40 feet in a single leap. Their retractable claws, measuring up to 4 inches, are designed for gripping prey, while their 4-inch canine teeth are perfectly positioned for delivering fatal neck bites that sever the spinal cord. These solitary hunters prefer to attack from behind and above, using incredible stealth and patience. They are particularly drawn to prey that exhibits erratic movement patterns, heavy breathing, or other signs of distress. Felicity began her solo trail run at 5:30 a.m., choosing the pre-dawn hours to avoid what she called inferior hikers. The combination of her erratic running pattern, heavy breathing, and the scent of fresh meat created perfect conditions to attract a hunting mountain lion. A 140-pound male mountain lion had been actively hunting in the area and had established a territory that included the Rabbit Ears Pass Trail. The powerful predator detected the scent of fresh meat from over a mile away and began tracking Felicity's movement through the forest. The cougar began stalking Felicity along the ridge above the trail, using rocks and trees to remain hidden while closing the distance. As Felicity rounded a sharp bend, the mountain lion positioned itself on a large boulder approximately 15 feet above the path. When Felicity passed below the boulder, completely unaware due to her loud music and arrogant belief that her fitness made her invulnerable, the mountain lion launched itself in a devastating aerial attack. The predator struck Felicity from behind with tremendous force, his powerful hind claws raking down her back, while his front paws wrapped around her shoulders and neck. The mountain lion's 4-inch canine teeth immediately found their target, clamping down on the back of Felicity's neck with surgical precision. Mountain lions kill their prey through a specific technique that targets the cervical vertebrae, and this male executed the attack with deadly efficiency. His powerful jaws applied crushing press of over 400 pounds per square inch directly to Felicity's spinal cord, severing the connection between her brain and body instantly. The bite penetrated deep into the neck muscles and fractured the vertebrae, causing immediate paralysis from the neck down. The cougar maintained his grip on Felicity's neck while using his powerful claws to secure his position. His hind legs continued raking down her spine and legs, opening deep wounds that bled profusely. Within 2 minutes, Felicity had died from a combination of spinal cord severance, massive blood loss, and suffocation caused by the crushing press on her neck and throat. The mountain lion then began dragging her body off the main trail toward a secluded area where he could feed undisturbed. Felicity's body was discovered 3 days later by a search and rescue team organized when she failed to return. The discovery location and condition of the remains were consistent with a mountain lion attack and subsequent catching behavior. It was December 3, 2014, and fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across rows of kennels at the county animal shelter. Jennifer Walsh, 25 and halfway through veterinary school, moved between cages with a determined stride, believing every animal deserved a second chance. As a weekend volunteer, Jennifer had developed a reputation for advocating for the shelter's most difficult cases. While others focused on friendly, adoptable dogs, she gravitated toward the aggressive ones, animals marked with red cards indicating immediate euthanization. The dog that would cost Jennifer her life was Diesel, a 75-pound pit bull with a scarred muzzle and eyes that seemed to hold years of rage. He'd been surrendered after multiple bite incidents, including an attack on a neighbor's child requiring emergency surgery. The behavioral assessment was decisive. Too dangerous for adoption. Scheduled for euthanization. Monday, Jennifer had been watching Diesel for 3 days, looking for signs of the gentle soul she believed existed beneath his aggressive exterior. She'd seen him pace restlessly, heard him growl at anyone who approached, watched him destroy every toy placed in his cage. But she'd also noticed what she interpreted as vulnerability. Moments when he pressed against the back wall, briefly softening when he thought no one was watching. The shelter's protocol was clear. Dogs like Diesel were never to be handled alone. Staff with years of experience and proper equipment were required for any interaction with red card animals. But Jennifer had convinced herself that Diesel's aggression was fear-based, that what he needed was one-on-one attention. On that December afternoon, with most staff busy and senior volunteers handling other duties, Jennifer made the decision that would cost her her life. She approached Diesel. "I've often wondered about the line between fear and calculation in animals, especially when they're under stress. Sometimes what we interpret as one is actually the other, with tragic consequences. I remember reading about a case where a woman named Jennifer made a fatal misjudgment, a story that still haunts me. Jennifer was at an animal shelter, preparing to evaluate a dog named Diesel. He was a 75-pound mix with a troubling history, and she was tasked with assessing his behavior in the isolation room. Diesel's initial reaction was clear: teeth bared, hackles raised, a low growl rumbling from his chest. It was a textbook display of aggression. But Jennifer saw something different. She interpreted those warning signs as fear. That miscalculation would cost her everything. When the kennel door opened, Diesel paused, seeming to assess Jennifer's position. The investigation revealed that Jennifer had violated multiple safety protocols and ignored clear warning signs. The shelter implemented new security measures, and Jennifer's death became a cautionary tale in veterinary schools. Her family established a scholarship in her name, but for students studying wildlife conservation, a final acknowledgement that some animals, no matter how much love they're shown, remain fundamentally dangerous. Not long after that tragedy, on April 17, 2018, another incident occurred, this time in Florida. The humid air hung heavy over Sunshine Primate Sanctuary, a facility with a controversial reputation. The power of a gorilla is something almost beyond comprehension. I've read accounts of their complex body language, how they can communicate through vocalizations, and how quickly their behavior can shift from calm to explosive violence, and their physical strength. Their massive hands can grip with crushing force, while their powerful jaws hold canine teeth sharp enough to inflict severe wounds. I remember reading about a woman named Jessica, a photographer who wanted to capture the intelligence and emotional depth of a gorilla named King. She approached his enclosure, camera in hand. King seemed calm, sitting near the fence, observing the visitors with what appeared to be curiosity. Jessica began taking photographs, excited by the conservation message she hoped to share. But then, the fatal moment. Jessica reached through the fence, thinking that physical contact would create a more powerful image, a stronger message for her advocacy. She saw King's calm demeanor and mistook it for friendliness, not realizing it was the patience of a territorial animal assessing a potential threat. King's reaction was instantaneous. The moment Jessica's hand crossed the barrier, the 350-pound silverback grabbed her arm with incredible strength, pulling her against the chain-link fence. Her scream filled the air as King's grip tightened, crushing bone. People tried to help, but his strength was simply overwhelming. He used one hand to maintain his grip on her arm, and the other to grab her head and shoulders, pulling her harder against the inadequate fencing. His territorial instincts took over. His powerful hands inflicted devastating trauma to Jessica's head, neck, and arms as she remained trapped. Her attempts to break free only seemed to increase his aggression, as he interpreted her struggles as a continued threat. Her movements grew weaker as blood loss and crushing injuries took their toll. King never loosened his grip. His fury focused on eliminating what he saw as an intrusion. Within minutes, Jessica's struggle ceased. The gorilla maintained his grip on her lifeless body, displaying threatening behavior toward anyone who approached. Emergency responders arrived, but it was too late. Jessica was gone. The investigation that followed revealed a disturbing truth. The Sunshine Primate Sanctuary was an illegal roadside zoo, exploiting animals and visitors for profit, while providing inadequate safety and care. The facility was shut down, and the primates were relocated. King was transferred to an accredited sanctuary where he could live out his life in conditions appropriate for his species. Jessica's death led to stricter regulations for animal sanctuaries and stronger enforcement of wildlife protection laws. Her family established a foundation to support legitimate primate conservation, ensuring that her passion would continue through organizations that truly protected great apes. Then there's the story of Maria Santos. It was March 18, 2017, a warm spring evening in the upscale neighborhood of Mountain View Estates in Asheville, North Carolina. Maria, a 41-year-old single mother, worked as a part-time dog walker, caring for the pets of the wealthy residents. She'd been doing this for 3 years, building a loyal clientele who appreciated her reliability and love for animals. She often walked multiple dogs at once, maintaining control and ensuring each pet received individual attention. Her income helped support her teenage daughter. The Mountain View Estates development had been carved out of pristine mountain forest, with builders required to preserve trees and maintain wildlife corridors. But recent construction had disrupted animal movement patterns, forcing bears, deer, and other wildlife to seek new routes through residential areas. The North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission had issued warnings about increased bear activity, especially as animals emerged from hibernation. Maria was aware of the warnings, but had never encountered any dangerous animals. She carried pepper spray as a precaution and had received training on wildlife encounters. On this particular evening, she was walking 3 large dogs, 2 German Shepherds and a Golden Retriever, when she noticed unusual activity near a row of garbage cans. Black bears are common in North America, with adult females typically weighing between 200 and 400 pounds. And mother bears with cubs are extremely protective, ready to attack any perceived threat to their offspring. I've seen what bears can do when surprised or cornered. They can run up to 35 miles per hour, and they possess the strength to break down doors and overturn cars. Their claws and teeth, devastating. I remember reading once about a woman named Maria. She was walking her dogs near some garbage cans when she encountered a 300-pound black bear and her 2 cubs. The mother bear was rummaging through the trash, and Maria's dogs, agitated, started barking. The mother bear, protective, rose to her full height, positioning herself between the dogs and her cubs. Maria tried to retreat, but the dogs kept barking, escalating the situation. The bear charged, covering 30 yards in seconds. Maria, tangled in the leashes, fell. The dogs scattered, and the bear attacked, striking Maria with bone-crushing force, her jaws clamping down, teeth puncturing. The attack was brutal, driven by maternal instinct. Residents called 911, but it was too late. Maria died from head and neck trauma. The investigation revealed that unsecured garbage had attracted the bear. Wildlife officials relocated the bear and her cubs, and the community implemented new waste management protocols. Then there's the story of Rebecca Martinez. It was October 15, 2016, the sun setting over her 10-acre property. The constant barking of 40 rescue dogs echoed across the land. Rebecca had spent 8 years building her sanctuary, taking in dogs that other shelters wouldn't touch, the aggressive ones, the biters. Her recent divorce had left her financially strained and emotionally isolated, with only her dogs for company. Her neighbors had grown used to the noise, though some whispered concerns. She rarely left the property, her hands scarred from countless bites. Friends noticed the changes in her, how she'd grown thinner, more withdrawn, speaking more about her dogs than anything else. The local veterinarian had stopped making house calls. Even the feed delivery drivers left supplies at the gate. The main enclosure housed her 3 largest rescues, Rex, Titan, and Scar. What Rebecca didn't realize was that these 3 had been forming an alliance, establishing a hierarchy that put them at odds with anyone who came between them and food. The warning signs had been there. The 3 dogs had begun sleeping closer together, sharing food bowls, and displaying coordinated territorial behavior. They'd started following Rebecca's movements more intently during feeding times, their body language shifting from grateful anticipation to something more predatory. But Rebecca, exhausted and emotionally invested, didn't see it. I'll never forget reading about Rebecca. She dedicated her life to rescuing dogs, giving them a second chance when no one else would. But one evening, everything changed. The dogs she had saved turned on her in a feeding frenzy, a horrific betrayal of trust. Rebecca approached the main enclos, buckets in hand, the 3 large dogs pressed against the fence, their eyes locked on the food, muscles tense with anticipation. She had done this routine thousands of times before, but that night felt different. The air seemed charged with more than just humidity. As Rebecca unlatched the gate and stepped into the enclos, her worn boots slipped on the muddy ground. She stumbled trying to regain her balance, but the weight of the buckets pulled her down. The metal containers crashed to the earth, spilling kibble across the wet dirt. Rex was the first to move. But as Rebecca struggled to get back on her feet, something in his demeanor shifted. His eyes, which had been focused on the kibble, now locked onto her. At that moment, she wasn't the woman who had saved him. She was in competition for resources. The attack came without warning. Rex's 90 lbs of muscle slammed into Rebecca's chest, driving her back to the ground. His jaws clamped down on her shoulder, tearing through flesh with devastating force. Rebecca's scream pierced the evening air, but there was no one around for miles to hear it. Titan and Scar joined the assault within seconds, their pack instincts overriding years of rehabilitation. Titan's massive jaws found her left arm shaking violently. Scar circled behind, his teeth sinking into her legs, dragging her further from the gate. Rebecca fought desperately, her free hand clawing at Rex's face, trying to break his grip. But the dogs were in full predatory mode now, their attacks coordinated and relentless. Blood soaked into the muddy ground as they continued their assault, their growls mixing with Rebecca's weakening cries. The feeding frenzy lasted nearly 10 minutes before the dogs finally backed away. Rebecca lay motionless in the mud, her body broken and torn, surrounded by the scattered kibble that had triggered the attack. For 3 days, Rebecca's body remained undiscovered on the isolated property. It wasn't until a delivery driver arrived with dog food that the scene was uncovered. Animal control officers found the 3 attacking dogs still in the enclos, showing no signs of continued aggression. Rex, Titan, and Scar were euthanized within hours, along with 12 other dogs deemed too dangerous for relocation. Rebecca's death sparked debates about unlicensed rescue operations. New regulations were implemented requiring permits for anyone housing more than 10 rescue animals. But for those who knew Rebecca, the rules came too late. Then there's Camille Morel's story. It was April 3rd, 2017, in Thor, France. Inside the Thor Zoo Safari Park, the wolf sector adjacent to the bison paddock, meant to mimic the wild stillness of Yellowstone, seemed calm. Yet, within the shadows of its pines, something alive and waiting stirred, a quiet rhythm of movement that would soon break that silence for good. Camille Morel was 29, a fitness instructor from Versailles who lived by routine. Known among her clients for her precision and self-discipline, she maintained the same training schedule no matter where she was. After 6 months of non-stop classes at her studio, she decided to spend a weekend at the Thor Zoo Safari, one of the few places near Paris offering guests an overnight wilderness immersion without leaving the country. It wasn't her first visit. She'd stayed once before and remembered the tranquility of waking to animal sounds instead of traffic. She booked the chalet not just for rest, but to keep her running habit intact in the open air. To friends, Camille's decision made sense. The park's trails and guest roads were well marked and safe during visiting hours. She'd read the safety pamphlet about restricted areas and believed her familiarity with the grounds made her cautious enough. Her chalet overlooked the fenced wolf sector adjacent to the bison range, a layout designed to reduce mixed species stress and liability during guest drives. The animals were separated by natural barriers and double fence zones, and guests were told the viewing area was completely secure. Camille trusted the system. Her goal that morning was simple: a quick 2-mile jog before breakfast, the same as she did every morning at home. The zoo's landscape was a strange fusion of natural calm and controlled wilderness. Pine trees in neat clusters, sandy trails, and an artificial stream running through the lands. At dawn, the service road and the inner track appeared nearly identical, a known issue in drive-through parks where early light flattens contrast. Beyond the chalet's edge stretched a gravel service road used by rangers and tour jeeps. The wolves' territory extended across nearly 20 acres of wooded ground. Grey wolves, the largest of the canids, can weigh over 100 libasren and run up to 35 vitwal bph for short bursts. Pack behavior revolves around cooperation and hierarchy. Most attacks on humans occur only when the animals feel threatened, cornered, or see unusual movement that triggers pursuit. In captivity, stress or broken boundaries can alter those instincts. That morning, a scheduled maintenance check had delayed some of the park's early operations. Workers had opened an internal service gate near the chalet to move a small utility vehicle through. Overnight, frost had iced the latch mechanism, preventing full engagement of the double lock. And when one of the workers received a call about a mechanical issue elsewhere, he left under maintenance override without confirming it was secure. The gate's interlock was meant to be re-engaged once staff passed, a step that failed. Around 7 a.m., Camille stepped outside with her phone and a small water bottle. She jogged down the gravel path that bordered the guest area, seeing no posted warnings. I sometimes think about Camille, the jogger who unknowingly crossed into a wolf enclave. It's a story that reminds me how easily we can wander into danger, even when we think we know the way. The wolves had been fed the previous evening, but after a cold night, they were restless, their senses heightened by the scent of human movement. The zookeeper in the observation tower, scanning the area, radioed for confirmation that the route was clear, only to realize, seconds later, that Camille was inside the enclave. He shouted into the radio for a patrol, but before anyone could answer, the wolves emerged from the trees. At first, they didn't charge. They moved low to the ground, tails stiff, heads aligned. Camille slowed, confused by their presence. She'd seen them before behind fences, and thought the barrier must be nearby. But then their posture shifted, and they began advancing in a slow, deliberate arc. That's when she froze. Turning, she saw the empty stretch of gravel behind her, and started jogging back, faster this time. The wolves matched her pace, then accelerated. She broke into a sprint. The zookeeper watched as Camille glanced back once. Near a drainage trench, her foot caught on the uneven gravel, and she fell forward, hitting hard, Before she could push herself up, the lead wolf clamped down on her right thigh, pulling backward with a violent jerk. She twisted, trying to kick free, but another wolf lunged at her shoulder. Her scream carried across the enclosure, high and ragged. The zookeeper sounded the alarm and radioed the rangers. It took the response vehicle just under 10 minutes to arrive. By then, 2 more wolves had joined, surrounding her as she tried to crawl toward the ditch. The lead wolf released and re-gripped higher, its teeth sinking into her hip. She struck out with her hands, scraping the gravel, trying to push herself forward, but one of the animals bit into her arm, shaking until it tore free. Within moments, she was on her back, thrashing as the pack pulled from opposite sides. She kicked weakly once more, then went still. The rangers arrived to find the wolves clustered over Camille's body, heads low and jaws working. Warning shots sent the pack scattering into the trees. 2 rangers approached as another called for a tranquilizer team. Camille lay on her side, clothing torn, deep bites from shoulder to thigh. One ranger checked for a pulse and found none. They covered her with a thermal blanket and secured the area until all 5 wolves were sedated. An autopsy confirmed death by exsanguination, massive blood loss due to multiple deep lacerations, and crushing trauma to the limbs. The body was transported under escort. Camille's family filed a civil lawsuit against the Thori Zoo Safari and its parent company, alleging gross negligence and breach of safety protocol. After a year of investigation and hearings, the court ruled in favor of the family. The park quietly settled without appeal. Following the incident, Thori Zoo Safari implemented procedural retrofits, installing interlocks and alarms that trigger if any gate remains unlatched for more than 15 seconds. It was July 22, 2016. The scorching Oklahoma sun beat down on the dusty grounds of Wild Art Big Hat Sanctuary, a privately owned facility nestled among rolling hills 30 miles outside Tulsa. The 50-acre property housed over 20 rescued lions, tigers, and other exotic cats in a collection of chain-link encloses that stretched across the rural landscape. The afternoon air shimmered with heat, while the distant sounds of roaring and pacing echoed from various habitats as the cats sought shade from the oppressive summer temperatures. Ashley Martinez, a 23-year-old college student from Dallas, had discovered the sanctuary through social media while road tripping with her boyfriend Jake through Oklahoma's quirky roadside attractions. Ashley was constantly seeking unique photo opportunities, having grown up taking pictures at every family vacation and special event. Her phone was filled with daredevil shots from cliff edges, abandoned buildings, and extreme sports activities that showcased her fearless personality. Ashley had grown up in suburban Dallas as the youngest of 3 sisters, developing a competitive streak that drove her to constantly push boundaries and seek attention through increasingly dramatic stunts. Her psychology major at Texas Tech University had given her confidence in reading people and situations, but her academic knowledge didn't extend to understanding animal behavior. That afternoon, Ashley and Jacob paid the sanctuary's fee for a close encounter experience that promised visitors the chance to observe big cats during feeding demonstrations and educational presentations. The facility operated in a legal gray area, offering interactions that legitimate zoos and accredited sanctuaries would never permit. African lions are apex predators that retain all their wild instincts, regardless of human contact or hand-rearing. Adult males can weigh up to 420 pounds and possess incredible strength, speed, and territorial behaviors that make them extremely dangerous in captivity. Caesar launched himself at Ashley, covering the distance in a single bound. Her phone flew from her hand as his paws struck her chest, sending her sprawling. His claws tore into her torso and shoulders. Then his jaws clamped onto her neck, his 4-inch canine teeth piercing through muscle and bone. Caesar's territorial instincts drove him to continue the assault, his claws raking, his bite unyielding. Jake's screams brought the sanctuary owner running, but Caesar's posture over his kill made intervention too dangerous. Ashley's movements soon ceased. Emergency responders arrived within 30 minutes, but it was too late. The subsequent investigation revealed that the facility lacked proper permits and insurance, violating safety regulations. Caesar was relocated to an accredited sanctuary. Ashley's death prompted her university to implement enhanced safety education, and stricter regulations were enacted for exotic animal facilities in Oklahoma. Then there was Giovanni Russo, 38, an experienced alpine guide in Grand Paradiso National Park in northern Italy. He and his wife, Elena, led trekking tours, and Giovanni was known for his practicality and deep knowledge of the mountains. Wolves had returned to the region after decades, a fact Giovanni respected but didn't fear. He believed in a balance between humans and wildlife, often telling clients that predators avoided people. One weekend, Giovanni and Elena led a pair of hikers from Milan on a routine trek. That night, a pack of trail mix was left open near the fire pit, and dinner scraps were tossed nearby. Wolves in this region typically hunted deer and chamois in coordinated packs, but recently rangers had observed younger wolves venturing closer to human camps, especially when food was accessible. Just before dawn, Elena woke to soft rustling near the cooking area, followed by a faint growl. Thinking it was a fox, she looked closer and saw several silhouettes clustered around the fire pit, where the food bag lay torn open. She whispered for Giovanni, who grabbed his flashlight and stepped outside. He walked toward the food zone, the beam of his light catching 3 wolves standing over scattered wrappers. He shouted and waved his light, but they didn't scatter. One stepped forward, hackles raised, paws firm on the ground. Giovanni shouted again, clapping his hands as he closed the distance. The older female lunged, nipping at his forearm. Giovanni jerked back, but a younger wolf followed through, biting down near his elbow. The bite struck deep, severing tissue. He fell backward, blood pulsing from his injuries. The wolves held their ground, circling the dropped food bag. Eleanor tore from the tent with a burning stick from the fire pit. I've spent years reading accounts of human-wildlife encounters, and some stay with you longer than others. Take the story of Giovanni, for instance. He was in a park when he collapsed, blood pooling around his collar, the victim of a wolf attack. His wife screamed, swung a torch, and managed to drive the animals away, but it was too late. Giovanni's chest moved once more, then stopped. Rangers arrived at the campsite just before sunrise. Giovanni's body remained where it had fallen, partially covered by his wife's jacket. Investigators determined the fatal wound likely occurred as he twisted while the wolf held his arm, a freak tear along the artery that caused near-instant collapse. The incident was ruled a food-provoked escalation involving juveniles, as the wolves had been feeding near unsecured rations. Then there's the case of the Lawson family. On July 15, 2016, they arrived at the remote Sundarbans National Park in West Bengal, India, a place where the Ganges River meets the Bay of Bengal. This UNESCO World Heritage Site harbours one of the world's most dangerous ecosystems. Genevieve Lawson, a 42-year-old real estate agent from London, had booked the most expensive boat tour package. She was known for her demanding personality, and she'd already berated their local guide, Ravi, multiple times during the morning briefing. Her husband, David, tried to moderate her behaviour, while their teenage children watched uncomfortably as their mother dismissed every safety warning. Ravi, despite his 15 years of experience, found himself intimidated by Genevieve's constant threats and demands for closer wildlife encounters. The motorboat had been equipped with safety barriers, but Genevieve viewed these precautions as obstacles preventing her from capturing the photographs she wanted. The Sundarbans serve as the exclusive hunting ground for the world's largest population of Bengal tigers. Unlike their mainland cousins, these tigers are exceptional swimmers and have developed an unusual willingness to hunt humans in water. Weighing up to 400 libby and measuring over 10 feet in length, these cats possess 4 in K9 teeth capable of crushing windpipes. During the afternoon tour, their boat approached a narrow channel where Ravi spotted fresh tiger tracks. He cut the engine and whispered for silence, explaining that a large male tiger had recently passed through. Despite his warnings, Genevieve became frustrated and declared she needed closer photographs. Against all protests, she stepped over the safety barrier and lowered herself into the chest-deep water, camera held high. Unbeknownst to the group, a massive 400 lb male Bengal tiger had been resting in the dense vegetation upstream. These tigers are ambush predators that use water as their primary hunting medium, approaching prey with complete silence. This particular male had killed humans before, and recognized the splashing sounds of vulnerable prey entering his territory. The tiger slipped into the water and began swimming toward Genevieve, with only its eyes and nose visible above the surface. When Genevieve reached the shoreline and began photographing tiger tracks, she remained completely unaware of the approaching predator. The tiger closed the final 20 ft underwater, and the attack erupted with explosive violence. The massive tiger surfaced directly behind Genevieve and immediately clamped its powerful jaws around her throat. The 4 in K9 teeth punctured her neck and crushed her windpipe. Genevieve's body went rigid as the tiger's teeth severed major blood vessels, causing massive internal bleeding. The predator's forelimbs wrapped around her torso, while its hind legs found purchase on her lower body, holding her in an inescapable grip. The tiger then began its drowning technique, pulling her backward into deeper water. I find myself haunted by the image of Genevieve, struggling in the water, a tiger's crushing bite on her throat, the severed arteries, the forced submersion. It all ended within minutes. The tiger held her under even after consciousness left her, before finally disappearing back into the mangrove. It was November 15th, 2016, in the remote forests of Primorsky Krai, eastern Russia. Snow fell, silencing the usual sounds. Nikolai Baranov's radio had been silent since morning. The last check-in had been brief, routine, offering no clue that his route would end in silence and blood. Nikolai was 52. He'd spent most of his life in those forests, working as a forestry worker, managing patrols in the buffer zones near the Cody Allen Mountains. He monitored traps, logging boundaries, and poaching activity. He lived alone near Dalna, his life built around the forest's rhythms. That week, he was surveying a hunting reserve after reports of wolves pushing closer to villages. He rode out before dawn on his snowmobile, a canvas bag packed with bread, tea, a hand axe, and flares. Colleagues said he preferred working solo, claiming a second engine scared off wildlife. His assignment was simple: document animal tracks after the first full snow. Wolves had been increasingly active, driven from higher ground after a collapse in wild boar numbers. Wolves there could travel up to 20 miles in a single night, driven by hunger across frozen ground. Their diets shifted with the season: deer in autumn, carrion, smaller mammals. In the hard months of winter, instinct sometimes blurred into desperation. A human scent, faint and unfamiliar, might trigger the same ancient reflex to follow and test. Locals warned of animals following sled trails at dusk. Nikolai heard the same warnings that morning, but didn't take them seriously. He checked his flare gun, but left his rifle behind, citing its weight. By noon, the weather had shifted, gusting snow and dropping visibility. His supervisor made several unanswered radio attempts, assuming battery failure from the cold. When evening came and Nikolai still hadn't returned, Yevgen, a neighboring ranger and longtime friend, prepared to follow his route. Yevgen rode out around 5 p.m. with a flashlight and a sidearm. The tracks were faint but visible, a single snowmobile line winding north, then stopping abruptly about 800 meters from the ridge. The engine was half buried in snow, its headlight faintly glowing. Prints showed that Nikolai had dismounted, perhaps to clear ice from the track. Around the site, another pattern emerged: paw marks, deep and overlapping, circling. The snow bore drag lines. The circle tightened. From that point, the scene unfolded through a sequence of struggle. Human footprints turned erratic, moving backward. A snapped branch at chest height. A torn glove 10 feet away. A smear of blood on the snowmobile's side panel. 30 feet beyond, clear impressions of multiple bodies pressing down. Wolves and man. They had likely approached silently using the cover of snowfall and wind. Initial bites were to the legs, pulling him down. Blood spray against nearby birch bark indicated arterial injury. Bite patterns indicated coordinated restraint from multiple angles. His jacket was shredded along the spine, showing where one animal had clamped onto his back, while another tore at the neck. Boot prints ended mid-stride, replaced by drag marks. Yevgen followed them cautiously, revolver drawn. He found the body 30 meters downhill near a frozen stream. The snow around it was flattened and red. The wolves had likely fed briefly before retreating. Later investigations showed at least 4 individuals, 2 larger adults, 2 smaller juveniles. Adult males can reach lengths of 14 feet and weights exceeding 1,000 pounds, with jaw muscles capable of exerting over 3,000 pounds of press per square inch. That's the American alligator. I remember reading about a man named Walt who moved to Florida after selling his plumbing business. He was drawn by the promise of year-round golf, fishing, and outdoor living, something impossible during Ohio's harsh winters. He bought a modest ranch home with direct water access, complete with a private dock where he could fish and feed the ducks that became regular visitors to his backyard. Walt's evening routine involved sitting on his patio with a cold beer, watching the sunset reflect off the calm water, while tossing breadcrumbs to the waterfowl. The Sunset Lakes community had been built on reclaimed wetlands, with developers creating an elaborate system of retention ponds and canals to manage stormwater runoff, while providing attractive water features for residents. The artificial waterways were connected to natural creek systems that flowed into Tampa Bay, creating corridors that allowed wildlife to move freely between developed and undeveloped areas. Recent heavy rains had raised water levels throughout the region, bringing increased wildlife activity to residential areas. Walt had noticed more alligators in the community's waters over the past few months, but like most Florida residents, he had learned to coexist with the reptiles as a normal part of life in the state. Walt's regular duck feeding had created a reliable food source that attracted waterfowl from throughout the area. Alligators are opportunistic feeders that will consume any animal they can overpower, including birds, fish, mammals, and occasionally humans who venture too close to their territory. That evening, Walt had been relaxing on his patio when he noticed that his favorite fishing lure had become tangled in the vegetation near his dock. Walt waded into the knee-deep water near his dock, using a long-handled net to try to free the snagged lure from the underwater vegetation. He had performed similar retrievals many times over the past 5 years without incident, confident that the shallow water near his property was safe for brief wading. The attack came from directly beneath Walt as he stood in the canal, focused on retrieving his lure. A 12-foot male alligator that had been submerged motionless near the dock for over an hour, waiting for ducks to approach the feeding area, exploded upward with devastating force. The massive reptile's jaws clamped down on Walt's right leg with bone-crushing power, its 3,000 pounds of bite press instantly fracturing the femur and severing major arteries. The alligator immediately initiated its signature death roll, spinning rapidly in the water while maintaining its grip on Walt's leg. The violent rotation dislocated Walt's hip and pulled him fully into the canal, where the gator's natural advantages became overwhelming. The 12-foot alligator dragged Walt toward the deeper center of the canal, where its superior swimming ability and underwater endurance made escape impossible. Within minutes, Walt's movements ceased as drowning and massive blood loss overwhelmed his system. Emergency responders arrived within 10 minutes of Margaret's call, but the alligator had already retreated to the deeper water with Walt's body. Police and wildlife officers worked through Thanaya to locate and capture the massive reptile using specialized equipment and trained personnel to safely extract both the alligator and Walt's remains from the canal. The investigation revealed that Walt's regular duck feeding had inadvertently attracted the large alligator to his property, creating a dangerous situation that culminated in the fatal attack. Walt's death prompted immediate changes to the Sunset Lakes community's water safety protocols, including the installation of warning signs around all retention ponds and canals. It was September 8, 2014, and the vast wetlands of the Florida Everglades stretched endlessly under the blazing afternoon sun. Their sawgrass prairies and cypress swamps teemed with some of America's most dangerous wildlife. The remote waterways near Tamiami Trail buzzed with the activity of airboat tours carrying tourists deep into alligator territory, where massive reptiles basked on mudbanks and hunted in the dark water channels. Michael Chen, a 35-year-old software engineer from Seattle, was experiencing his first visit to Florida as part of a cross-country road trip he was taking to celebrate his recent promotion. Michael had always been fascinated by technology and outdoor adventure, spending his weekends hiking in the Pacific Northwest Mountains. His engineering background had given him confidence in analyzing risks and solving problems, but his experience with dangerous wildlife was limited to black bears and mountain lions that could be avoided through proper precautions. Michael had grown up in urban Seattle, developing his love of nature through weekend camping trips with his father and uncle. His methodical approach to problem solving had made him successful in his career, but it had also given him perhaps too much confidence in his ability to assess and manage dangerous situations. Michael enjoyed taking photos of his travels to share with his family and friends back home. That afternoon, Michael had joined a small group airboat tour that promised close encounters with alligators and other Everglades wildlife. The tour guide, a weathered Floridian with decades of swamp experience, had repeatedly warned passengers to remain seated and keep hands inside the boat at all times. I've always found alligators fascinating, their prehistoric forms perfectly adapted to their role as ambush hunters. And adult males can be quite large, reaching lengths of 14 feet and weights exceeding 1,000 pounds. Jaw muscles capable of exerting over 3,000 pounds of pres per square inch. It's hard to imagine. I remember reading about a particularly tragic incident. It was an airboat tour, progressing smoothly, when the guide spotted a massive alligator sunning itself on a mudbank. The reptile was an exceptional specimen, easily 12 feet in length and weighing over 800 pounds. A man named Michael on the tour began photographing it, excited to capture images of such an impressive wild animal. But his enthusiasm quickly overcame his caution, and he leaned farther over the boat's edge to get closer shots. The fatal moment came when Michael's phone slipped from his grip. Without thinking, he lunged forward, desperately trying to catch his expensive device before it disappeared into the swamp. The alligator had been monitoring the boat's presence, and Michael's sudden movement triggered its attack response. The 800-pound reptile exploded from the mudbank with terrifying speed, its powerful tail propelling it through the water like a missile, aimed directly at Michael's exposed position. The alligator's massive jaws clamped down on Michael's outstretched arm with bone-crushing force, 3,000 pounds of bite press, instantly shattering bones and severing major arteries. His scream of shock and pain echoed across the swamp as the reptile's momentum pulled him completely over the side of the airboat and into the murky water. The tour guide and other passengers grabbed desperately at Michael's legs, trying to pull him back into the boat, while the massive alligator maintained its crushing grip on his arm. The alligator immediately began its signature death roll, spinning rapidly in the water, while maintaining its devastating grip. Michael's struggles grew weaker as the combination of massive blood loss, crushing injuries, and drowning overwhelmed his body. The alligator's grip never loosened as it continued the death roll with mechanical precision, each rotation causing additional trauma while ensuring its prey could not escape. Within minutes, Michael's movement ceased as the alligator's brutal assault proved fatal. The massive reptile dragged his body into deeper water, where it disappeared beneath the surface with its kill. Emergency responders arrived within the hour, but Michael's body was not recovered until the following day. The tour company immediately implemented physical barriers around all passenger seating areas and enhanced safety briefings for future tours. Michael's death prompted his family to advocate for stricter safety regulations in the wildlife tourism industry. The incident highlighted the deadly consequences of ignoring safety warnings around apex predators and became a cautionary tale about the dangers of prioritizing photography over personal safety. It was July 8, 2017, and the Detroit summer heat shimmered off abandoned lots as Maria Santos loaded her car with dog food and water. At 28, she'd spent 5 years walking dogs by day and feeding Detroit's feral population by night. Recently laid off, she'd been spending more time in dangerous neighborhoods, trying to help animals most people considered beyond saving. The economic collapse had hit Detroit hard, leaving entire neighborhoods abandoned and creating perfect breeding grounds for packs of wild dogs. These weren't lost pets. They were second and third generation feral animals that had never known human kindness, surviving by scavenging and defending territory with savage efficiency. Maria's regular route took her through 6 abandoned lots, each home to a different pack. She knew their hierarchies, feeding schedules, and individual personalities. But the newest group concerned her the most. 6 dogs led by a large German Shepherd mix she'd nicknamed Alpha, including several animals she didn't recognize. This pack was hungrier, more aggressive, and less predictable than the others. But Maria's compassion overruled her caution. These animals needed help, and she was the only one willing to provide it. As twilight settled over the abandoned neighborhood, Maria parked near the lot where Alpha's pack had made their home. The area was a wasteland of broken concrete and waist-high weeds, perfect cover for animals that had learned to hunt and hide. Maria had been feeding this pack for 3 weeks, always maintaining a safe distance. But tonight felt different. The dogs seemed more agitated, their movements more coordinated, their attention more focused on her than the food. What she didn't realize was that pack dynamics had shifted with the addition of 3 new dogs, animals that saw humans not as providers, but as competitors. Alpha emerged from the shadows first, his 80-pound frame moving with predatory grace. Behind him came the others, a scarred pit bull mix, 2 smaller dogs, and 3 newcomers whose breeds were impossible to determine. Their eyes reflected the dim streetlight like mirrors. Maria began distributing food as always, tossing handfuls of kibble in different directions to prevent fighting. But tonight, the strategy backfired. Instead of dispersing to eat, the dogs began to circle. I've seen what happens when animal instincts override everything else. It's a primal switch that flips, and suddenly, there's no reasoning, no memory of kindness, only survival. Maria learned that lesson in the most brutal way imaginable. She made the fatal mistake of stepping between fighting dogs. Alpha, the leader, saw her not as a provider, but as competition. His 80 pounds slammed into her, jaws clamping down with devastating force. The other dogs joined in, their pack mentality erasing any memory of Maria's care. The scarred pit bull crushed bone. The smaller dogs tore through flesh. Her screams went unanswered in that abandoned neighborhood. 6 dogs, a coordinated attack, too much for any human. They dragged her deeper into the lot, their actions refined by generations of urban survival. These weren't pets. They were wild animals. Her movements grew weaker, and the dogs showed no signs of stopping, their frenzy fueled by blood. By the time they backed away, Maria was gone. Urban explorers found her the next morning. It took 3 days to capture the dogs. They were euthanized, their wild nature making rehabilitation impossible. Then there's the story of Kendra Sullivan. It was September 8th, 2015, when she arrived at Namba Island Chimpanzee Sanctuary in Uganda. A wildlife photographer commissioned to document the rehabilitation work with rescued chimpanzees. The sanctuary, a 100-acre forested island on Lake Victoria, was a refuge for these intelligent primates. Kendra, known for her fearless approach, believed her experience with domestic animals gave her an innate understanding of animal behavior. Her friend, Amy Chen, a documentary filmmaker, went with her. But Dr. James Mukasa, the sanctuary's director, grew concerned as Kendra dismissed safety briefings, demanding access to restricted areas. Peter Sally, a caretaker, warned her about the unpredictable nature of the chimpanzees. The sanctuary housed 49 rescued chimpanzees, many traumatized. Despite rehabilitation, they retained their wild instincts and capabilities, making them dangerous without proper barriers. Chimpanzees are incredibly powerful, 5 times stronger than an adult human. Males can weigh up to 150 pounds with massive muscles and a grip strength that can crush bones. They also possess large canine teeth, designed for defense and dominance. During the tour, Kendra grew frustrated with the viewing restrictions. She wanted access to maintenance areas, but Dr. Mukasa explained they were strictly off-limits. While the group observed chimpanzees, Kendra noticed an unlocked gate to a maintenance corridor. Despite warnings, she slipped away, believing her experience had prepared her. The maintenance area put Kendra within reach of Boso, the sanctuary's dominant male. He was a 150-pound adult, rescued as an infant. Boso had shown aggression toward unfamiliar humans and was considered one of the most dangerous animals. He was resting near the barrier when he detected Kendra's presence. Chimpanzees are territorial and see unfamiliar humans as threats. Boso became agitated by her intrusion. When she raised her camera, he interpreted it as a challenge. His response was immediate. He lunged and grabbed Kendra's arm with crushing force. I've read accounts of chimpanzee attacks, and one detail always stays with me: their instinctive targeting of faces, hands, and genitals. It speaks to a calculated, brutal efficiency. One such attack occurred when a chimpanzee named Boso, with canine teeth over 2 inches long, turned on a woman named Kendra. The pres of his bite was immense, around 1,300 lb per square inch, instantly fracturing the bones in her forearm. He used his strength to pull her against the barrier. Those razor-sharp teeth tore into Kendra's face and neck. His hands ripped at her clothing, his feet kicking violently. For nearly 2 minutes, the attack continued. Boso maintained his grip, biting and clawing. His jaws crushed facial bones, tearing away skin and muscle. Major blood vessels were severed, causing massive bleeding. Kendra's attempts to defend herself were futile against such overwhelming force. Her free hand was mutilated, several fingers crushed. Peter Sully, hearing the screams, rushed in with high-press water hoses, managing to drive Boso away after what must have felt like an eternity. But by then, Kendra had suffered catastrophic injuries. The massive blood loss and shock proved fatal within minutes. She died before emergency services could reach the island. The investigation that followed focused on security failures. Then there's the story from February 9th, 2014, near Langer, Saskatchewan. The morning light filtered through the boreal forest as 2 men set out on what they thought was a routine trip. David Lasky, a part-time wildlife photographer, often went into the woods with his cousin Jeff to retrieve SD cards from trail cams. They'd grown up hunting and fishing together, familiar with the rhythms of the wild. That weekend, after a light snowfall, David wanted to check a set of cameras he'd left by a frozen creek. They'd heard distant howls before, but never close. David believed wolves avoided humans by instinct. The plan was simple: a 2-hour snowmobile ride, a short hike to the cameras, and back before dusk. Wolves in that region were typically grey, thick-coated animals, averaging about 90 pounds. They moved in tight family groups, relying on coordination and patience rather than speed. The men dressed warmly and carried only a single red flare for safety. By 9:30 a.m., they parked their snowmobile and began walking the last half-mile. At first, everything was normal. They reached the first camera, brushed off the lens, and swapped the SD card. Around 10:15, as they crossed the creek, Jeff slipped on a patch of ice. David crouched to help him up. That's when they noticed movement among the tree line. The animals stood still at first, only their eyes catching the light. Jeff straightened and waved his arms, shouting to scare them off. But the wolves didn't run. Unbeknownst to the men, a freshly killed deer lay half buried in the snow nearby, a cached carcass the wolves were defending. They began to fan out slowly, forming a loose semicircle. David muttered that they were just curious. That noise would drive them away. But even as he spoke, one of the wolves lowered its head and started advancing. The men began backing up the slope toward their snowmobile, moving quickly but without turning. The wolves followed, quiet and steady. Then came the first lunge, a grey blur across the ice, jaws clamping onto the back of David's leg. The impact drove him face first into the snow. Jeff spun and reached for the flare, but his gloves fumbled with the cap. 2 more wolves broke from the trees, bounding fast. David tried to kick free, leaving streaks of blood against the snow. He managed to roll onto his back and swing an arm, hitting one wolf across the muzzle with his camera bag. But another struck from the side, teeth finding his shoulder. Jeff finally snapped the flare to life, the red flame hissing. He swung it toward the animals. One wolf snarled and darted back, fur singed along its flank, but the others held their ground. David was on his knees now, one hand pressed to his thigh, blood pumping dark and fast through his fingers. He tried to rise, but his leg gave out beneath him. Jeff charged forward with the flare, yelling, waving it more aggressively. The heat drove them back momentarily, circling just out of reach. David slumped sideways. I've spent years reading about how quickly life can end, how a single moment can change everything. And sometimes, despite all our precautions, the wild still finds us. The story of David and Jeff in the Canadian wilderness is one I've often thought about late at night. Jeff, his breath shallow, swung the burning flare in wide arcs. The wolves hesitated, retreating into the trees with low growls. Jeff pressed on his cousin David's wound, but it was too deep. Within a minute, David was gone. Jeff pulled David's camera bag close and used his phone to call for help. Reception cut in and out, but a faint signal reached a nearby ranger station. Authorities arrived about 40 minutes later by snowmobile. They found Jeff sitting beside the body, shaking uncontrollably. Wolf tracks surrounded the site in a broad ring, with drag marks leading back toward the tree line and a deer carcass. The official report listed the cause of death as exsanguination from femoral artery trauma, consistent with large animal bites. Provincial conservation officers, assisted by federal wildlife agents, closed the area within the hour. Samples were taken from bite margins for DNA analysis, and the implicated pack was later trapped and relocated to a remote management zone north of Reindeer Lake. Wildlife biologists suggested the wolves had been defending a food cache, not actively hunting, but the distinction mattered little to those who saw the aftermath. It was December 9th, 2018. In the hillside community of Canyon Vista in suburban Los Angeles, it was an unusually warm winter evening. The residential development, built where urban sprawl met the wild chaparral of the Santa Monica Mountains, featured homes perched on steep slopes with spectacular views of the city below. Kevin Chen, a 16-year-old high school junior and varsity basketball player, was running late after practice. He decided to take his usual shortcut through an undeveloped lot, rather than follow the longer route along the main road. Kevin was an honor student and star athlete who balanced academic excellence with athletic achievement, earning recognition as one of his school's most promising college prospects. He lived with his parents and younger sister in a modern home that backed up against the natural open space that made Canyon Vista such a desirable address. Kevin often used the informal trails and vacant lots to move quickly between his home and school, a practice that had never caused any problems during his 4 years at the neighborhood. The Canyon Vista area had been experiencing increased wildlife activity, following a series of devastating wildfires that had burned thousands of acres in the surrounding mountains. The fires had displaced numerous predators, forcing them to seek new territory and food sources in areas they had previously avoided. Local authorities had issued warnings about mountain lion sightings in residential areas, but most residents viewed these as routine precautions rather than serious threats. Kevin was aware of the wildlife warnings, but had never encountered any dangerous animals during his frequent use of the neighborhood's informal trail system. He carried his basketball gear in a backpack and typically moved quickly through the undeveloped areas, confident that his familiarity with the terrain and his athletic ability would keep him safe from any potential threats. Mountain lions are solitary predators that require large territories to support their hunting needs, with adult males controlling ranges of up to 100 square miles. Juvenile males are particularly dangerous as they establish new territories, often displaying more aggressive behavior than experienced adults. These young cats are less skilled at hunting natural prey and may target easier victims, including domestic animals and occasionally humans. Mountain lions are capable of incredible stealth and can stalk prey for extended periods before launching surprise attacks from close range. As Kevin jogged through the overgrown vacant lot, he was unaware that an 80 lb juvenile male mountain lion had been using the area as a hunting ground for domestic cats and small dogs that wandered from nearby homes. The young cat had been displaced from his natal territory by an older, more dominant male, and was desperately seeking to establish new hunting grounds that could support his survival. The mountain lion had been stalking Kevin for several hundred yards, moving silently through the dense brush while staying downwind to avoid detection. The cat's hunting instincts were triggered by Kevin's size, movement pattern, and the fact that he was alone and vulnerable in the predator's newly claimed territory. The attack came from behind as Kevin navigated through a particularly dense section of chaparral. The 80 lb mountain lion launched himself from the brush with explosive force, his powerful hind legs propelling him through the air to land squarely on Kevin's back. The impact drove Kevin face first into the rocky ground, while the cat's claws found purchase in his shoulders and back. The mountain lion's jaws clamped down on the back of Kevin's neck, his 4-inch canine teeth puncturing through muscle and vertebrae, while his bite force targeted the spinal cord. Kevin's attempts to fight back with his backpack proved futile against the cat's superior strength and positioning. The mountain lion's razor-sharp claws raked across Kevin's shoulders and torso, each swipe opening deep gashes that caused massive blood loss. Kevin's screams for help echoed through the hillside community, alerting residents in nearby homes to the emergency unfolding in the vacant lot. Several homeowners called 911 while attempting to locate the source of the disturbance, but the dense vegetation made it difficult to pinpoint Kevin's exact location. The mountain lion continued his attack for several minutes, driven by predatory instincts and the stress of establishing new territory. Police and paramedics arrived within 10 minutes of the first 911 call, using Kevin's continued cries for help to locate him in the brush. I sometimes find myself wondering about the line between the wild and the human world. I read once about a mountain lion that fled into the chaparral after attacking a man. The man, Kevin, died from blood loss and spinal injuries. It turned out the young mountain lion had been displaced by wildfires and was trying to find a new home. Wildlife officers tracked the cat and euthanized it, deciding it was too dangerous to relocate. The city then fenced off vacant lots, and the community installed motion sensor lights and emergency systems. The man's family even created a foundation for wildlife safety education. It all makes you think about how our actions ripple out. Then there's the story of Brandon Walsh. It was November 3rd, 2015, and Brandon, a 27-year-old personal trainer from Houston, found himself on the sprawling 300 acres of the Lonia Exotic Ranch in East Texas. He'd paid a hefty price for a photo session with Sasha, a 300-pound Bengal tiger. These ranches, operating in the shadows of legitimate conservation, offer a kind of interaction accredited zoos would never allow. Brandon was passionate about fitness, always pushing his limits. He saw this as the ultimate test of courage. He'd built his business on helping others overcome their fears, but perhaps his success had made him a little too confident. He paid the ranch an exorbitant fee for this private session with Sasha, a tiger hand-raised from a cub. The owner, an experienced animal trainer, warned him repeatedly about the dangers. Bengal tigers, you see, are solitary and territorial. Their bite force can exceed 1,000 lbs per square inch, and their claws can grow up to 4 inches long. The session started safely enough, with Brandon posing outside Sasha's enclos, but he quickly grew frustrated with the distance. He wanted more dramatic photos. He convinced the owner to let him into a smaller holding area, separated from Sasha only by a chain-link barrier. It was a terrible decision, against all safety protocols. Brandon crouched down near the barrier, extending his hand towards Sasha, as if to show dominance. The tiger's ears flattened, and her tail twitched. Then, in a flash, everything went wrong. The moment Brandon moved suddenly, the tiger attacked with explosive force. She launched herself at the barrier, her claws finding purchase on Brandon's arm. Her strength pulled him against the chain link. Her claws raked across his arm and shoulder, opening deep gashes. The owner rushed in, trying to distract Sasha. But it was too late. The damage was catastrophic. Brandon collapsed from shock and blood loss within minutes. His physical conditioning was useless against such devastating injuries. American alligators are ambush predators, perfectly camouflaged and able to remain motionless for hours. Adult females can reach 8 to 10 feet in length and weigh up to 200 pounds, possessing incredible speed and power. They are most dangerous when protecting nests or surprised by humans. Their bite force exceeds 2,000 pounds per square inch, and their death roll is designed to disorient and drown prey. Roberto waded into the knee-deep pond to retrieve his trimmer, assuming it was safe. The pond appeared peaceful, with no signs of wildlife. He'd worked around similar features hundreds of times without incident. But the moment his feet touched the muddy bottom, a 10-foot female alligator exploded into action, her jaws clamping down on his right leg with devastating force. The reptile's bite fractured his tibia and fibula, puncturing arteries and muscle. the alligator initiated her death roll, spinning rapidly while maintaining her grip. The violent rotation pulled Roberto into the deeper water, where the gator's aquatic advantages became overwhelming. His attempts to break free only triggered the alligator's instincts to bite harder and roll more aggressively. Roberto's screams echoed across the manicured grounds. The spinning motion dislocated his knee and hip, causing massive internal bleeding and tissue damage. The pond's clear water turned red as Roberto's struggles weakened. A homeowner heard his cries and rushed to investigate. I've spent years studying the intersection of human behavior and the natural world, but some incidents still haunt me. Take the case of Roberto, for example. It serves as a stark reminder of how easily the wild can encroach upon our constructed spaces, with devastating consequences. His story also led to changes in the way residential areas manage their water features. A small but important victory in the ongoing battle to coexist with potentially dangerous wildlife. Then, there's the story of Tara Whitfield. On March 22, 2017, she arrived at the Neptune Islands off the coast of South Australia. I've always been drawn to this location, one of the world's premier great white shark diving destinations. The remote, rocky outcrops jut out from the Southern Ocean, surrounded by crystal-clear waters that plunge to depths of over 200 feet. These nutrient-rich waters serve as a natural highway for migrating great whites, drawing these massive predators to hunt the abundant seal colonies. Tara, a 38-year-old marine biology graduate student from Los Angeles, had booked the most expensive shark cage diving package available. But she immediately began making unreasonable demands. I find it so interesting how people behave when they feel entitled. Known for her attitude and belief that money could buy her anything, she berated Captain Steve Morrison and marine biologist Dr. Lisa Chen multiple times during the morning briefing. Each tooth measures up to 3 inches in length and is designed to slice through flesh and bone with devastating efficiency. Great whites possess the most powerful bite force of any living creature, capable of exerting over 4,000 pounds per square inch of crushing press. The crew had successfully attracted multiple great white sharks using a carefully prepared chum mixture. Among the responding predators was a massive 18-foot female, estimated to weigh over 4,000 pounds, that had been feeding aggressively on the bait. The enormous shark displayed classic hunting behaviors, circling the boat with calculated precision, while investigating the steel diving cage. Before entering the water, Tara secretly loosened the connections on her diving regulator, planning to create a fake equipment malfunctions that would justify exiting the protective cage. She believed she was clever enough to manipulate the situation to get the unrestricted shark access she felt entitled to. Once submerged in the protective cage, Tara immediately began signaling fake distress to the surface crew, pointing frantically at her sabotaged regulator. Captain Morrison initiated emergency procedures to bring her to the surface. But instead of ascending, Tara swam away from the cage toward the feeding sharks, believing her superior intelligence made her invulnerable. Her erratic swimming movements created the exact type of distressed prey behavior that triggers great white hunting instincts. As Hank bent down to clean the water bowl, his back turned to the dog. Brutus made his decision. There was no growling, no warning, just 130 pounds of muscle launching through the air with devastating force. The impact drove Hank face first into the concrete floor, his bucket clattering away as Brutus's jaws found their target. The dog's teeth sank deep into Hank's throat, crushing his windpipe and severing major blood vessels in a single catastrophic bite. Hank's hands clawed desperately at the animal's massive head, but Brutus had locked on with predatory determination. The dog's powerful neck muscles allowed him to shake violently, tearing through tissue and bone with mechanical efficiency. Hank's screams were cut short by the damage to his throat, replaced by a wet, gurgling sound that grew weaker by the second. Blood pooled beneath his body as Brutus continued his attack, driven by instincts bred into his lineage for generations. The assault lasted less than 3 minutes, but the damage was irreversible. When Brutus finally released his grip, Hank lay motionless on the kennel floor, his life ebbing away in the Alabama heat. Martha returned home 2 hours later to find the property strangely quiet. She called out for Hank as she walked toward the kennels, but received no response. When she rounded the corner and saw Brutus standing guard over her husband's body, the full horror became clear. The dog's reaction to Martha's presence was immediate and threatening. He positioned himself between her and Hank's body, his lips pulled back in a snarl. Martha backed away slowly, dialing 911 from her truck. Sheriff's deputies arrived within 20 minutes, but Brutus refused to allow anyone near Hank's body. After consulting with animal control, the decision was made to shoot Brutus rather than risk additional casualties. The massive Rottweiler died with 3 bullets in his chest. The investigation concluded that Hank's death was a tragic accident caused by his failure to recognize warning signs of an aggressive, injured animal. The breeding operation was shut down, the remaining dogs relocated, and Martha was left to grieve both her husband and the animal that had been part of their family. Then there was September 3rd, 2013, near the Toklat River in Denali National Park, Alaska. By early afternoon, the wind had dropped and the landscape stood still, open and silent. From a distance, it looked calm, a place where nothing could happen quickly. But the quiet there was deceptive. Sarah Miller, 26, was an experienced backpacker from Anchorage. She was known for her... I remember reading about the case in Denali, and one detail has always stuck with me. The victim's last photograph was taken just 6 minutes before her estimated time of death. Just 6 minutes. I can't help but wonder what thoughts raced through her mind in those final moments. Sarah was an experienced solo traveler. She preferred a minimalist approach, carrying only what she trusted, relying on skill over gear. That particular week, she planned a 2-day loop near the Tlat River, timed to coincide with the caribou migration. It was a route where wolves were often seen trailing the herds. She carried bear spray, a GPS beacon, and enough food for 2 nights. Solo travel didn't intimidate her. She'd done it for years, often documenting her routes for small hiking blogs. The Denali backcountry zones required permits, which she had properly filed. Rangers later recalled that she had inquired about late-season wolf movements, but showed no concern when told sightings had increased near the river corridor. Wolves had been following caribou herds migrating south, and fresh tracks had been noted days earlier. To Sarah, it was simply part of the environment, one she respected but didn't fear. Wolves in that region averaged between 70 and 100 pounds. They were built for endurance and speed, capable of covering 40 miles in a day. Their jaws delivered a bite force of nearly 400 pounds per square inch, strong enough to crush bone. Though they rarely approached people, subsisting mainly on caribou, hares, and ground squirrels. When prey grew scarce, or human scent carried traces of food, curiosity sometimes lingered. That week, rangers had posted advisories near trailheads, noting that several hikers had reported wolves trailing them at a distance. One flank of the group approached from behind, following her retreat up a shallow embankment. Handprints pressed deep into the soil showed she climbed in haste. Blood marks began at the top of the slope. One wolf had likely lunged first, grabbing her backpack or arm. The straps were torn clean through, consistent with a pulling force rather than a cut. A second wolf joined, aiming lower, its bite breaking the skin along her thigh. She tried to fight back. The spray canister lay spent beside her pack, but the group coordinated, one attacking from the rear, the others darting forward. The ground at the site was churned with soil and hair, suggesting several minutes of movement before she was forced down. Analysis of tissue marks later revealed crushing bites to the neck and shoulder, consistent with a killing grip, the kind wolves used to suffocate large prey. Her jacket was shredded, and the torn sleeve, recovered 20 feet away, still held fragments of skin and fabric. Search efforts began that night, with both ground crews and a helicopter dispatched after rangers noted her vehicle unmoved. The aircraft spotted a disturbed patch of gravel near the Tlat Channel the next morning. Sarah's body lay partially covered by soil and debris, her left arm missing, likely carried off by scavengers after the attack. Her reputation for getting her way through sheer force of will had created a dangerous sense of entitlement. Tommy Rodriguez, a 52-year-old tour guide with over 20 years of experience, had immediately recognized Monica as a problematic client during the morning safety briefing. She had interrupted his presentation. "I've seen the power of nature turn against those who underestimate it. I remember reading the case of Monica, a lawyer who visited a national park during alligator nesting season. She reportedly flaunted her legal knowledge, believing it made her superior to the guides, and even threatened lawsuits when they tried to enforce safety rules. Park Ranger Sarah Kim tried to warn her about the dangers of alligators during their breeding season, but Monica dismissed it as government overreach. This was peak alligator breeding season, a time when male alligators are incredibly aggressive, protecting their nesting areas. Park officials usually restrict access to certain waterways and post warning signs. American alligators are apex predators. Adult males can reach up to 14 feet and weigh over 1,000 pounds. They have one of the most powerful bite forces in the animal kingdom, capable of exerting over 3,000 pounds per square inch. Their jaws have 74 to 80 razor-sharp teeth, perfect for gripping and crushing prey. They can remain motionless for hours, then explode into action. During the guided tour, Tommy, the guide, repeatedly warned everyone to stay within designated channels because of the active alligator nesting season. There were warning signs posted around known nesting sites, indicating where territorial males were guarding their offspring. Monica became increasingly belligerent, accusing Tommy of limiting her constitutional rights and threatening legal action. Despite Tommy's attempts to keep the group together, Monica broke away and paddled her kayak toward a restricted lagoon marked with multiple warning signs. She wanted to investigate some wildlife activity, claiming she had every right as a tax-paying citizen to explore the national park. But this lagoon was a primary nesting area for a massive 12-foot bull alligator who had been actively defending his territory for 3 weeks. The 800-pound reptile had established his dominance and driven off smaller males. Monica's kayak immediately triggered his most aggressive defensive instincts. The alligator detected the vibrations from Monica's paddle strokes almost instantly. He had been resting motionless beneath the surface, perfectly camouflaged. The attack was swift. The 800-pound predator launched itself from the water, its jaws clamping down on the front of Monica's kayak. The impact capsized her kayak, throwing her into the murky water right in front of the enraged reptile. As Monica struggled, disoriented and panicked, the alligator identified her as a threat. His jaws found purchase on her torso, his teeth puncturing her life jacket, going deep into her chest and abdomen. The crushing bite shattered multiple ribs and punctured both lungs, severing major blood vessels. Then the alligator began its signature killing technique, the death roll, a violent spinning motion designed to disorient prey and cause massive internal trauma. The 800-pound reptile rotated rapidly in the water, spinning Monica's body while maintaining its grip. The violent rotation tore muscles and caused catastrophic internal injuries. The death roll continued for over a minute, with Monica trapped in its jaws. The violent motion filled her punctured lungs with water, and the crushing press prevented her from breathing. Her shattered ribs ground against each other, causing more internal bleeding. The combination of massive internal trauma, drowning, and blood loss proved fatal within 2 minutes. Monica's struggles gradually ceased as the alligator continued its death roll. The reptile eventually released her lifeless body, which floated to the surface. Tommy radioed for emergency assistance, but rescue teams couldn't reach the remote lagoon in time. Then, on May 14, 2017, in Great Smoky Mountains National Park, Sarah Johnson, a 29-year-old registered nurse from Atlanta, was enjoying a weekend hiking trip with her fiancé, Tom. The late spring afternoon was perfect for hiking, with sunlight filtering through the trees and wildflowers carpeting the forest floor. Sarah loved nature photography and always carried her camera to capture memories. Her medical background gave her a practical understanding of emergency situations, but her experience with dangerous wildlife was limited. She'd been hiking throughout the Southeast for over 5 years, building her confidence and wilderness skills. She worked long shifts at a busy trauma center, and these mountain getaways helped relieve stress. That afternoon, Sarah and Tom were hiking through a remote alpine meadow when they saw 2 black bear cubs playing in the tall grass, with no mother in sight. Sarah knew this was a rare photo opportunity. Black bears are North America's most common bear species, But I've learned that a mother bear with cubs is exponentially more aggressive and territorial than one living alone. They will attack without warning to defend their young, seeing any human presence as a mortal threat. They are incredibly strong, capable of running up to 30 cm maps or through dense forest. I recently read a story that chilled me to the bone. It was about a woman named Sarah, who lost her life because she got too close to a mother bear and her cubs. And Sarah and her fiancé Tom were on what was supposed to be a memorable engagement trip. They encountered a group of bear cubs, and Sarah started photographing them from what she thought was a safe distance. But her excitement at capturing such rare footage led her to gradually move closer for better shots. Tom repeatedly urged her to keep her distance and leave, but Sarah was convinced the mother bear wasn't nearby. The cubs continued their playful behavior, wrestling and tumbling through the meadow grass as Sarah documented their every move. Her photography session continued for nearly 10 minutes as she captured dozens of images. Sarah's fatal mistake was positioning herself between the cubs and their natural escape route to the forest edge. As she moved to get a better angle, she unknowingly blocked the path the cubs would take to reach safety if threatened. This triggered the protective instincts of their mother, who had been watching from the tree line. The mother bear's charge from the forest was swift and terrifying. The 200 lb female covered the distance to Sarah's position in seconds, her powerful legs propelling her massive frame with surprising speed. Her territorial fury was focused entirely on eliminating the perceived threat to her cubs. Sarah attempted to retreat when she saw the charging bear, but her foot caught on a fallen log, and she tumbled backward while still clutching her camera. The mother bear reached Sarah's position before she could regain her footing, striking her with bone-crushing force. The bear's massive paw connected with Sarah's back, her razor-sharp claws raking across her spine and shoulders, while the impact shattered several ribs.